Inside the stadium, they may look small, but their hearts beat strong. Hands clench. The stands roar with excitement. The game kicks off. Dreams take flight. Because every strike tells a story. Because every goal echoes across the continent. In Africa, football is more than just a game. Follow the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations from December 21st to January 18th on France 24.
France Media Monde, all around the world.
Feliz Año Nuevo.
Happy New Year.
Chúc mừng năm mới.
Heri ya mwaka mpya.
Happy New Year. Feliz Año Nuevo.
Bonne année.
Feliz Año Nuevo. Happy New Year.
France Media Monde wishes you a Happy New Year 2026. In Egypt, debt is a crime punishable by imprisonment.
A woman lent me the money. She didn't tell me there would be interest.
And women are the first victims.
It terrifies me. It wakes me up at night.
They are vulnerable, their creditors are merciless.
Lenders prefer dealing with women because they can control them. Men can disappear.
But women are fighting back to help these mothers and their children.
Here it is. We call it the House of Life.
This is inside the prison. It's a nursery we asked them to build. Our role is to soften that impact through art, culture, and music.
Watch Reporters. Egypt, from debt to prison, on France 24.
Hello and welcome back to our Africa Cup of Nations coverage. Every match day, we're back here in the studio to debrief everything that's been happening. A lot has been taking place today. Here with me in the studio tonight is once again Tando Sibia. Good evening, Tando.
Good evening, James.
Plenty to go through. Two incredible quarterfinals that we've been witnessing tonight. Let's bring the results up for you. The latest results taking place over in Morocco. Algeria were beaten by Nigeria 2-0 in the first match from tonight. And just wrapped up, Egypt managed to edge past Ivory Coast. Very, very close for them. But Egypt looking very, very solid, as were the two winners of tonight. That means then the road to the final is just here. It means that Senegal will be facing Egypt and Morocco have the task of Nigeria. Either of those winners will be going into the finals, go head-to-head to try and lift the 35th cup in the Africa Cup of Nations. And well, we've just seen Egypt hold on to Ivory Coast and put on a very, very convincing performance. So we're going to begin with that. That started very, very much on the forefront. Omar Marmoush scoring the opening goal in the third minute with Rami Rabia doubling Egypt's lead just after that. Ivory Coast pulled one back before half-time. Mohamed Salah, though, came back to get a third. The Elephants couldn't quite make it despite holding on. That's a second for the Elephants left with the final score. For a second, the Elephants were managing to get, almost thinking they were going to be coming back, but it finished with a final score then 3-2 as mentioned. And we have two pairs of eyes on the ground for us tonight. Let's head first to Karim Baldi, who's in Rabat for us. Karim, good evening. Tell me, how impressed were you with that Egyptian side there?
Yeah, let's say, James, that was the most eventful game of the quarterfinals by and large. I was impressed by this Egyptian team because when we looked at their run of 16 game versus Benin, we get some doubts because they went up to overtime. But this time they scored very early thanks to Omar Marmoush. He scored only once this season with Manchester City in the UK, and now he scored twice at the AFCON. And we can be impressed as well by their offensive line. Obviously, Mohamed Salah always involved in goals. We saw it. We saw him scoring. We saw him each and every time Egypt needed him since the beginning of the competition, and that was the case tonight as well. And a credit as well to Imam Ashur, because he's looked as the future genius of the Egyptian side, and it was a bit disappointing since the beginning of the competition, in my opinion, because he couldn't deliver with his talents what we expect from him. And that was the case tonight with 2 assists and this lovely ball for the third goal of Egypt with the outside of the left foot. So yeah, definitely Ashur now is at the level we expect from him. And if you add it to Salah and Marmoush and all the others and the defenders, well, you have a very solid squad for the Pharaohs.
Yeah, he was indeed. It's crucial for that, for getting especially that opening goal, the opening goal in just the first few minutes of the game. Tando, Karim just mentioning there how Egypt were managed to, they shuffled their team around, they had to do so. And it ended up working out brilliantly for them. Karim just said that was one of the most epic games that we've seen so far in the tournament.
Exactly, and I think coming in against the current champions of the African Cup of Nations, we had high expectations for Ivory Coast. They've been playing significantly well throughout the tournament, and I think even coming into this game, Egypt were not necessarily the favourites, considering the changes that they had to make, the forced changes. Trezeguet, who was out with an ankle injury after the game against Benin, and then now Mohamed Hamdi out completely of the tournament after a ligament injury. So you have the midfield, and you also have a little bit of the attacking changes. And also in the game against Benin, they had 5 defenders, and this time around they moved it to 4. Well, it was 3 and then moved it to 4. And so you could see that they were playing a little bit of a defensive game. But I'm actually really stunned by how the goals necessarily didn't come from Mo Salah from the outset. So I do think that there's a little bit of change in the way that the playmaking is taking place in this Egyptian side. And they are looking quite synergized, a lot more fluid, a lot more composed, a lot more organized as well in field. So defensively, you'd see how they would huddle up in the middle of the field. And make it almost impossible for the Ivorians to create any chances. So it's not necessarily that the youngsters in Diallo or Diomande or even Kessie, a more experienced midfielder, were not playing so well. It's just that the Egyptian side made it so difficult.
Because they had impressed so far in the tournament.
Exactly. So it's that in the previous opponents, it was a little bit easier for them to create chances, whether they would move out to the wing or they could play down the middle. So shout out to the Egyptian side for doing their research and really just saturating that midfield where it was almost impossible. When you had one player with the ball, you'd have 3 defenders coming in to just neutralize them completely. So this game, actually, the scoreline is practically 4-1 for Egypt, if we look at it, because on the scoreline, it was 4 Egyptians who scored tonight. But also a shout out to Gela Due, who really rose to the occasion. I think it was 2 games ago. I had spoken about how significant he is in this side. I think this is his first call-up. So I do think that this is not the end for them. Coach MS Fai has something to work with. These are youngsters of 19, 20-year-old. Yes, the experience in Kessie, but he's only 30 as well. So I do think that there's something to build from. It's not easy to maintain your reign as reigning champions in the African Cup of Nations. So unlucky for them in this exit, but really a huge shout out to the Egyptians. And it's going to be a difficult, very interesting one, a repeat of the 2021 AFCON final. So I do think that Mo Salah, Sadio Mane, former teammates, I don't know, it's just going to be electric, but we have plenty to look out.
Yeah, plenty indeed. As you mentioned there, so difficult to defend your title in the African Cup of Nations. Karim, I'll just come back to you. Of course, those who've defended it, there are Egypt, who have defended their title. They did that 3 times. Ghana have done it. Cameroon have as well. But here we've got Egypt coming back in the forefront of this edition. Do you see them? After this display from tonight, do you see them possibly going back to becoming the reigning champions?
Yes, they can. And we already talked in this show about Mohamed Salah's mission. He is the one who has to win this AFCON. Sadio Mane has won it. Riyad Mahrez has won it. And Mohamed Salah has won it. That's why we look at him as a guy on a mission to win this AFCON and to be at the level of his current head coach, Bassam Assad, who is the legend because he won 3 times the AFCON, 3 times in a row, the Africa Cup of Nations. So this is a very important thing to keep in mind. And the last thing about Egypt is their high rate of efficiency tonight, because they scored 3 goals with only, I think, 4 or 5 shots on target, which is a massive exploit to do, and they scored 6 goals in the last 2 games. So in the knockout stage, they scored only 3 times in the first 3 games of the competition. So it means that Egypt, they are rising up as long as we advance, as we go further into the competition, and this is gonna be very important for the 2 last games if they go up to the final.
Yeah, it's exactly that. They're definitely a team who take their chances when they get there and take full advantage of them, and that definitely has served them tonight, especially considering that they don't always have the ball. They were leaving the ball very much to their opponents. We'll talk about that a little bit later when we look forward to the semi-finals to come. But first, of course, we've got to go back to the other game from tonight. As mentioned, the host nation will be facing Nigeria next. That's the Super Eagles, who outclassed Algeria early on in the evening in a one-way match. Victor Osimhen and Akol Adams once again both finding the net, as Algeria just couldn't quite figure out how to come back in the game. Well, in Marrakesh, Selina Sykes was there for us. She joins us now from Marrakesh. Selina, Nigeria very much then, as mentioned, more than just a step above Algeria today.
That's right, James. As you put it, the Super Eagles completely outclassing Algeria in Marrakesh. It took them a bit of time, though, to find that goal. They were perhaps a bit wasteful with their chances in the first half. They had a fair few, but didn't quite find that killer finish until very obviously early on in the second half. They didn't lose much time there with Victor Osimhen, who else getting that first goal in the 47th minute, getting his head on the end of a cross into the box to open the scoring for the Super Eagles. It then didn't take them long to double their lead. 10 minutes later, as you said, with Akol Adams getting that goal. A nicer piece of Nigerian teamwork there. Once again, Alex Iwobi, the playmaker of this Nigerian side, as he does for Fulham, impressing. He was a playmaker again, sliding in the ball to Victor Osimhen in the box. Victor Osimhen, who could have taken on a defender or two, but he rather unselfishly instead passed the ball to his teammate Adams, who then got that second goal for Nigeria, completely outclassing Algeria this evening in Marrakesh. Algeria, who didn't have a single shot on target. Maybe Nigeria, who could have had 1 or 2 more, James, but Luka Zidane, who had clean sheets in all of his matches up until now for Algeria, letting in those goals this evening. There Algeria sitting back. They'd obviously had one of the best defences in the competition before heading into this match, and just couldn't find a way to get that goal. Yet 0 shots on target, so there's not much to be said of from the Algerian side. Nigeria outclassing them in every shape and form.
Yeah, perhaps Tanzo, as Selina just mentioned there, maybe the only disappointment for Nigeria here tonight was that they could have scored much more than they had. I mean, Adams definitely could have had a hat-trick tonight. He hit the post once. There was Ben Sabani also, clearing the line for it was Calvin Bassey, wasn't it? I mean, it could have been so much worse for Algeria tonight, but Nigeria clearly controlling. But is that something maybe up front they do? I mean, they're scoring so much, but they could do just a bit more.
We can say that for every team, really, if that's how we're going to talk. We can say that for Egypt tonight. There were a lot of chances that they could have also capitalized on, but they didn't. But at the end of the day, they won the game with a clean sheet, with actually a considerable scoreline. So I do think that, yes, they can clean it up and polish it up. The main concern, I think, going into the next game is that Ndidi, their captain, got a yellow card, so he's not going to have to miss that game. The next
Huge knock for him.
Same thing for Stanley Nwabali. So here you are losing an integral part of your defense, which is the last line of defense, and your captain in such a crucial game. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Coach Eric Schell looks at it. I was looking at the options that they have. They have Francis Uzoho, who is at Ammonia FC, and that is in the Cyprian League. And then you have Obasogi. Yeah, there we go. Obasogi, and he plays in Tanzania. And so those are the 2 options in the goalkeeping department. But you definitely are going to miss the experienced side, because Stanley Nwabali has been doing really good for the Nigerian side. Is this a nice opportunity for a new goalkeeper to step up? It's a lot of pressure, especially considering their opponents in the Moroccans, the hosts. So it's going to be a huge thing that they're going to have to manage. But I do think that up front, they have a lot of firepower. And if they continue to work that the way that they have, today the defense was really neatly organized. Yes, you can probably say that the Algerians made it a little bit easier for the defense to be organized, because today I was actually quite surprised at What happened to the Algerian offense? There was a lack of discipline. There was no game plan. Well, it looked like it. I can't say for sure that there was.
They had no idea how to come back.
It looked almost shocking. I was also looking out for Mahrez. He also looked
Who was substituted just after half time.
Yeah, he looked a little bit out of it. Even in the previous game, he looked like he was limping in the game. He wasn't attacking as much as he usually does. So I would like to actually hear from him in the days to come from here what actually happened. Maybe he was injured or he's dealing with something. But something was just not looking quite okay with this Algerian side tonight.
Is that something? Because there were 3 substitutions that happened just right after half-time. Mahrez, as you mentioned, Bounedjah as well, had Moussa as well. I mean, is this something that the Algerian manager should have maybe done earlier on? Was it too late?
You know, even in the last time when you had asked what can we expect, I said maybe they'll start Bulbina, who is the guy who scored the goal. Just a new range of options. So it seemed that Petkovic looked like he ran out of ideas. That's what it looked like.
First
I can't
shot,
say it for sure.
First shot, 80th minute for Algeria. That's how bad and how, I mean, far pushed they were. I mean, of course, Nigeria played extremely well. But as you say, impossible for them to get anywhere around. Let's just take, we've heard from Victor Osimhen just after the game. Let's just take a listen to what Osimhen had to say after the game tonight. Here he is.
I mean, I think as a person, as a man, as a player, I think I've evolved a lot because I've always gone back to the mistakes that I made, even while in my spare time, and try to see how I can improve myself. And I think now I'm so much confident in the way I play, with the help of my teammates, of course. And I think for me, it's not about the goals, it's not about the assists.
Yeah, well, Victor Osimhen has said they're clearly grown from the last days. Of course, they managed to reach the final last time round, but we've seen him on the pitch, the way he manages. I mean, also coming in, let's see the role that he does play in the next games, of course, with the absence of the captain. But I just want to go back to Selena just first after that, because we've touched on Algeria being, so tough for them. But tell me, you who were inside the stadium, what was that like for the fans? Because, of course, there's been a lot of hope over the last, it's been disastrous in last times for Algeria. This time, not so much at all. There was much more belief. But is there some kind of acceptance that perhaps a team like Nigeria just is too much for Algeria as the way things are at the moment?
Well, look, James, Algeria fans obviously massively outnumbering Nigeria fans in the stadium in Marrakesh. I think definitely after from what I've seen, after obviously a home support here in Morocco, they probably have had the biggest fan base here in Morocco cheering on the Fennec. After the match, I think, pretty much a quiet acceptance from Algerian fans. Some still very joyous, has to be said, and happy. There was still Algerian flags being waved around after the match. As you mentioned there, obviously the last 2 editions of AFCON have been disastrous for them. They obviously won the title back in 2019, but last 2 editions they had crashed out at the group stages. So this performance here at AFCON are giving their fans some hope again, perhaps, for the future. Obviously, a lot of talent in this side coming off. Obviously, Maza has been a breakout star for them at this tournament. So, after the match, I would say Algerian fans obviously disappointed to see their journey end here, but I think maybe a quiet hope for the future, James, to come for this Algerian side.
Do you think, Tanzo, we were talking about, Algeria, and of course, one of the big names in there, of course, is the young Zidane, Lucas Zidane in there. Today, we actually got him, we got to see him, perform and be outperformed by, in particular, there was that the goal from Victor Osimhen, which, what do you make of that? Lucas Zidane makes some bizarre jump when the header comes in the wrong way, and he didn't need to jump at that point. He could have closed the angle. It was very, very small. What do you make of that? It's going to be tough for him, surely.
I think it's going to be tough, but is
this the beginning of a learning?
Exactly.
Experience?
That's the point I wanted to make. That this is the beginning of a learning curve. So you have to face different kinds of opponents for you to learn different kinds of ways to stop the ball. So the jump, I actually watched it over a few times, and I thought the jump was it was warranted. It was normal, because when a header comes in, or you see a player coming up for a header, it looks like he's going to hit it sideways. And
Right.
so that's why he jumped and brought his arms up. So I think he read it quite well, but not well enough to see that he's actually going to knock it with his head. You wouldn't even expect that from Victor Osimhen, considering the fact that he's wearing a mask and he
Sure.
got surgery on his face. So you wouldn't think that he'll take such a huge risk to actually push it with the exact same part of his face that he's injured in. And that's what he did. And he hit it down and it ricocheted off the ground and into the goal. So Victor Osimhen took a huge risk. It was incredible. Unfortunately for Luka, you can't see that coming. That was a huge test, and I think next time he's going to learn not to come so forward or perhaps not to even jump and read it better. And even for the second one, I think Akor Adams played around with him a little bit there. Him and Victor Osimhen did brilliantly with that second goal. I think Akor, it was in the post interview, I think, they asked him about how he managed that. And he just said, yeah, I saw the goalkeeper coming up forward and then I just decided to wait and then I tipped it to the side and then it was clear. So I think once you start playing with players who have that much experience, I think it makes you step up your game a little bit because,
without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah, definitely biggest game. I mean, we of course saw his dad throughout the tournaments, keeping a watchful eye on him over there. But as you say, huge learning curve for him just at the beginning. Of course. Let's just take a look at the full results from these quarterfinals before we move on. Yesterday, it was Senegal who were first to book their spots with a very difficult 1-0 win over Mali. Mali, who despite being down to 10 men in the second half, managed to hold on, causing trouble there to Senegal. After that, Morocco produced their best performance of the tournament so far. They were all over Cameroon, ousting the indomitable Lions at 2-0. A reminder then of the road to the final. Here it is, the road to the final with the next games to come there. Senegal have Egypt awaiting, while Morocco will be facing Nigeria. Those games both taking place on Wednesday. There are still a few days to go to prepare for those semi-finals, of course, then, with it taking place on Wednesday. Morocco still in the race for a first title in 50 years. Nigeria are clearly in great spirits. And after that win, let's take a listen to what a few of their fans had to say, but also what Morocco's manager Walid Regragui is thinking ahead of the semi-final clash to come. Here are both.
I think at this point in time, it could go either way. That's final before final. Morocco has a very strong team and they have very strong backing. They're also in the tournament. They want to win too. Nigeria also wants to win. So I think it's all for the glory of football generally. Whoever wins the semi-final match.
Nigeria were like the king of Africa. See the footballers, they're different. We're like the Rolls Royce of football. We're different from all these guys. Watch when we catch Morocco.
C'est historique.
It's historic. It's been 22 years since Moroccans last saw their national team reach the AFCON semi-finals. I think they deserve it. They deserve it, the fans and the players, because they want to make history. Now, as I told them, we have to keep our feet on the ground. There's a match ahead that needs to be even more historic to keep things going. In any case, that was a complete performance. We will try to recover as quickly as possible.
One of the Nigerian fans there claiming to be the kings of Africa. I mean, definitely they can, go towards that title. But I think Egypt, with their 7 titles for now, retain just that. Selena, we heard from the manager there also from Morocco's side. He's appearing pretty calm, pretty confident going into this. Is this a change that you felt also in the country over there?
Well, James, it's been a bit up and down, hasn't it, in terms of what fans have thought about their side at this AFCON. Obviously, the Atlas Lions coming into the competition with so many expectations on their shoulders, so many expectations for them to win here on home turf after their only other title coming 50 years ago. They obviously came into the competition with that amazing string of wins. I think it was 18 before AFCON, before coming to AFCON. So a lot of expectations. Obviously, it started well, didn't it, with that opener, and then there were a bit of doubts when they got that 1-1 draw against Mali. Regragui, as you heard earlier, he was always saying, he cited even the 1998 French team at the World Cup, saying, that teams have to suffer if they are to win titles. And obviously, there was that last 16 match where they got that narrow 1-0 win against Tanzania. Fans not seeming too happy, enthused about that one, but then obviously that big 2-0 win against Cameroon when they were complete control, weren't they, in that match. So I think fans now starting to dare to dream that this might all be possible. And obviously that's what the fans are here for as well, to rear on their side, but also sometimes obviously to be hard on their side as well. You can feel that Moroccan fans are quite hard on their team at times. It has when it's come to the other results, but obviously a lot of expectations here for this Atlas Lions side. But look, they're in the semi-finals and they have the best defence of the competition with just 1 goal conceded. Interestingly, then going up against the best attacker of the competition with Nigeria, who've obviously scored 14 goals so far. So that will be a fascinating encounter.
Yeah, daring to dream, as you say, that's probably the best thing that they could hope to hear at this point. Really lovely to hear anyway. The other semi-final will be seeing the Lions of Teranga then take on the Pharaohs. A huge game for that to come. Let's go back to Karim in Rabat. Karim, I mean, what is Senegal going to be thinking after that performance, after seeing Egypt in there? What is Senegal going to be feeling right now? They know they've got a very, very tough side to come up against. And Senegal, we saw them in their last game against Mali. Not exactly the Senegal that we'd hoped to see. And as Tando mentioned, not the Senegal that we saw play against Egypt the last time round when they went on to win the Cup.
Yeah, but I slightly disagree with you guys on the fact that Senegal struggled to win versus Mali. Okay, they won by a small margin, 1-0. But I was at the stadium in Tanger yesterday, and what we can see is that was a full domination from Senegal, to be honest. But they lack efficiency, and especially in the second half, when they had to score the second goal to be sure to go further. So that's why, by and large, when we look at the game, they have massive chances. They can create massive chances. They are sure of their strength. And when we look at Pep Thiaw on the bench, we see that it doesn't say much during the game. He's quiet, he's calm on his bench, and he doesn't have to speak out loud. He doesn't have to yell sometimes at players because they know what to do. And Senegal has two teams in one squad. When they took out Iliman Ndiaye, for example, the goal scorer yesterday, and they brought Ibrahim Baye from PSG. When they put out Pape Gueye, for example, and you see Lamine Camara on the pitch, well, you have quality at each and every level. So that's why I think that Senegal, they are sure of their strength in this competition, and we'll see what's going on, what will occur versus Egypt. But still, they are sure that they have the mentality, they have the strength, and they have this calm to manage each and every situation, even if Egypt could score first in the semi-final. So
do you think that they have a better way of managing to deal with Egypt's tactics? We saw Egypt today, 70% possession at one point against Ivory Coast. Do you think, Ivory Coast had difficulty finding a way out of that. Do you think Senegal, though, would be able to find a way of countering Egypt, even though, the 70% was for the other side, of course, Egypt leaving very much the ball to their opponents. Do you think that they wouldn't get trapped into that in a way, just like Ivory Coast did at the start of their game?
That could happen, but still, I think that Senegal has decided for a while now to play their football. They say it. Pep Thiaw said it in the press conference before the quarterfinals. Mali, we have to keep on our football. Pep Gueye said the same as well. So it means that no matter what Egypt will prepare in terms of tactics, they will have to keep on their abilities and on their solutions. If they get trapped by Egypt, they have players on the bench to come in and to put more speed. I think about Ibrahim Baye from PSG. That was the case during the group stage, for example, in some games when they brought Ibrahim Baye in, or even when they brought El Hadj Malik Diouf out of the bench to replace Jacobs. That was versus Sudan in the round of 16 game. At the end, they got solutions. So that's why I don't want to be too much overconfident for Senegal, but still, I'm impressed for a while by this team. Egypt, they will have their chance, obviously. They have their offensive line, obviously. But I keep my doubts on the goalkeeper El Shenawi, because what we saw tonight, 2 goals conceded on set pieces for Egypt, 2 goals scored by Ivory Coast, and El Shenawi on both set pieces, it wasn't quite clear in terms of his intervention. So that's why, well, I give a slight advantage for Senegal in that game, in that semi-final.
All right, well, really, really interesting to hear. And of course, these are 2 giants, as mentioned, going up against each other. It's going to be something to watch. Huge semi-finals, to say. As we've said, there's no really small teams left, and there can never be small teams left at this point in the competition. We've got about just a few seconds left before we wrap up. Do you see, Tando, the same scenario happening for Senegal facing? After what we saw Egypt do tonight?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a 50-50, and
Right.
It's any man's game. It can even honestly expect anything. I can't even make like a clear out prediction, but if I am really forced to, I would say 2-1 to Senegal. And when we're talking about the Rolls Royce of football coming up against the current hosts, it's a tricky one. It's a very, very tricky one. But I might go by a long shot here and give it to Morocco.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's we'll have to wait until Wednesday to find out. So it's going to be some huge clashes to come. Tando, thank you very much. Thank you both to also Karim Baldir over in Rabat and Selena Sykes. And we'll be back, as mentioned, next week on Wednesday after the rest of the semi-finals. Well, the semi-finals to come as we follow the final stages, the final moments of this African Cup of Nations, and see who is crowned in the 35th edition of this competition. See you then. Bye-bye.